Welcome to Coffee with Democrats, a sensible platform for progressive conversations. Coffee with Democrats is a grassroots movement dedicated to hearing from Democrats, candidates, legislators, and friends from all political backgrounds who want great conversations. Coffee with Democrats is committed to increase Democrat voter registration and Democrat voter turnout by making voting more exciting and meaningful. And now here's your host of Coffee with Democrats, Kevin Dawson.
Well, good morning. Good morning. Today is March 21st, 2024, and we are excited. We are really excited to have a guest with us today, Michelle McCane for State House District 72. She is somebody that we're really, I can't tell you how excited we are. She's from the Tulsa area, and we really want to have more conversations from people all over the United States, but here in Oklahoma, we have to have conversations all over Oklahoma, and including some of the other cities such as Tulsa. I'm in Norman. Scott, you're in Oklahoma City. So again, we're kind of spread out here, and we're deeply excited to have you, Michelle. Thanks for coming on with us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate this. I think talking to people is the better part of campaigning.
Exactly. So this is Coffee with Democrats. So for those people who are coming on and just now listening, please share this platform. Please share this show with all of your friends and colleagues. Make sure that as many people get a chance to see and hear from Michelle as Michelle talks about why she is campaigning and what her platform is. But also, we're going to be broadcasting on YouTube Live. You can see that at Coffee with Democrats 7998. On Facebook Live, just type in Coffee with Democrats. We're the only ones out there. And then on Twitter Live, we're at Coffee with Dems. When it was Twitter, before it turned into X, they didn't give us enough room to be Coffee with Democrats. So we're Coffee with Dems on Twitter. So it's the @ Coffee with Dems. So this is Coffee with Democrats. So let's find out a little bit about what your favorite coffee or coffee substitute is, Michelle.
I am like a cappuccino person. I was told I'm not allowed to call the coffee that I drink coffee because I put so much cream and sugar. In fact, I was told it is a milkshake warmed up. But I like French vanilla. I'm kind of like basic in that regard. I just bought 2 bags of cappuccino mix from Quick Trip before they change out their machines because I'm really into their vanilla cupcake cappuccino. So before it goes away, I purchased bags of the mix.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm like you. As a person who I was on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with my previous occupation, I grew to appreciate coffee, but I never liked the taste of it. So I have to doctor mine up. I still don't like the taste of black coffee. So I put a lot of creamer and sugar in it. But after I have 1 cup of coffee in the morning, I fall back either on water or Coke Zero. It's kind of a mix between the two of them. And I'll be honest with you, it's more Coke Zero than it is water. So, Scott, what are you having this morning?
I've already had 2 quart jars of iced coffee this morning, and I like mine with just a little bit of cream, and that's it. I actually do like the taste of coffee, but coffee is one of those things that the smell of it brewing far exceeds the what's in the cup.
Yeah, it smells amazing. It's a really good smell.
So as we get started from this point on, I'm going to go ahead and pin Michelle so that people can see Michelle more than than anybody sees Scott or myself. So here we go. You are now pinned as the guest for us. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about Michelle, and I'm going to spare you your voice for just a little bit. And it's not because I want to take that away from you. It's just because I like to talk, and I I went over to your website, and for people to know where that's located, it's McCane for OK, spelled out MCCANE for OK.com. If you can't figure it out, look at Michelle's shirt. It's right there on her shirt. As a career teacher and lifelong resident of North Tulsa, Michelle McCane's commitment to education is deeply rooted in her personal experiences and understanding of the challenges faced by students, teachers, families, and community members. She is a strong advocate for resources and education, ensuring that every child receives the support they need to succeed academically, and every family has the resources for quality of life. That's an excellent opening statement for Michelle McCane, and I like the fact that it's very succinct. It's direct and to the point. If you don't know who Michelle McCane is, it was summed up in 5 sentences. So thanks for coming on Coffee with Democrats. We need to talk just a little bit about you, beginning with you first. I like to talk a lot with all the candidates because as constituents, we always like to get to know who represents us. What's their background? What is, we're, going to give us a life story. So we'll do a little biography. Tell us a little bit about where you were born and raised.
So I was born and raised in Tulsa. I've lived here my entire life. I went to Tulsa Public Schools. My first school was Hawthorne in North Tulsa. I went to Bell and then Carver and Booker T. So I've been Oklahoma born and raised my whole life. This is always, where I've been. And that's kind of why I'm running too, is I want my community to be amazing because I don't want to feel compelled to move like some of my friends and family have. So born and bred Tulsan. North Tulsa is not just like where I grew up, but my great grandparents built their house in District 72 back in the 50s. And my cousin lives there now. So it's District 72 is home. This is like a very, very important place to me. And so is Tulsa in Oklahoma. So that's where I'm from.
Okay. So, you went, you were product of public education, but you also went to college, right?
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about where you went to college and what your degree work was in.
Okay. Let me tell you a little bit more about my education. I went to public schools, but then I wasn't always in class like I should have been.
Okay.
So I had my first child whenever I was 15, and she is now 20. She'll be 21 this year. And so I actually dropped out of high school and immediately got my GED. And so I didn't finish high school the traditional way, and then turned 18 and was like, I probably need to go back to school. I knew I wanted to go back to school, but with a baby, I didn't know what to do. I went to TCC and got my associates in elementary education. And then I went on to NSU to get my bachelor's in elementary education, and then proceeded a couple of years ago to go back to NSU to get my master's in library media and information technology.
So you
That's
started.
impressive.
I was going to say, I'm just impressed with that. First of all, being a teen mother is such a challenge, and yet you didn't lose focus. I mean, for crying out loud, that was such an impressive thing. That's a huge feat. Just saying, all right, I've taken life as it is, and I'm going to go ahead and achieve the things that are necessary. And getting your GED is just an amazing feat. And I'm sure that whole process is not an easy process. And then again, raising a young child, going back to get your bachelor's degree and your master's degree. And I will just say this out loud. When you say that you've got a child 20 years old, you don't look much older than that yourself. So I am amazed. I really am.
I hope I continue this youthful look well into like my 60s. I hope that for the rest of my life, everybody goes, you don't look that age.
You
There you
definitely
go. That's a good goal right there.
So you're running for District 72. And for those people, District 72 is a very convoluted on the map.
It is.
I'm going to put it up here onto the screen, and you'll be able to see that. But it is just it's through the downtown district along the Interstate 64, I believe it is, and then goes straight north. It's almost like that was a gerrymandered district, but it is currently held by a fellow Democrat, somebody who we know very well, who has been on Coffee with Democrats, Monroe Nichols, and he's running for mayor for Tulsa. So that kind of bodes well for you and gives me a little bit more of a comfortable feeling, but knowing that those are big shoes to have to fill, that really means you got to really pound the pavement and go door to door and meet a lot of people and let people know that Michelle is going to be the person that can fill those shoes left by Monroe.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. And the interesting thing, I think we're coming up on like 2,000 doors at this point that we've already knocked. And for the most part, people have said either nobody's ever knocked on my door, or you and Monroe are the only ones who have ever knocked on my door.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
yeah, I definitely have big shoes to fill. Monroe's been really supportive of my campaign as well. So I feel good about, taking that up. I say all the time, like, I'm not entitled to this seat. I've got to earn people's votes. And so that's really all I do. But yes, Monroe's mentioned at the doors quite a bit.
So we're going to talk about really three different subject matter at this point. We're going to talk about, we'll talk about a fourth one. I'll ask just right up front. Do you know if you have a Republican challenger this time?
So far, it is not looking like that. The GOP put out a list last year of districts that they were going to target, and 72 wasn't on the list at all, even though some of the districts they had listed, they marked them as things that they weren't focusing on. 72 wasn't on it at all. So I don't think that we'll have a Republican challenger at the moment. Okay. We'll see in a couple weeks. Filing is the first week of April, so we'll know for sure then. At the moment, though, nobody has announced, nobody's filed with ethics, so I think that we'll be able to just anticipate a primary this time. Okay,
and then so that really leaves us without having the discussion of an opponent at this point. We really need to get into the brass tacks of things. We really need to start understanding the issues that people in Tulsa really need to know about. And I think those can be summed up pretty simple. And that is the public teaching crisis, which has been exacerbated by this crazy man that is our superintendent of public instruction. We can talk about the healthcare crisis in Oklahoma. And then finally, the big one, which is the national topic this year, but it's also from the national level all the way down to the very, grassroots level, is women's rights and bodily autonomy. So let's kind of get into those three topics and talk just a little bit about those. Talk to us more about your understanding of the crisis in Oklahoma that is being faced, your personal experiences with that, and also tell us, what you think we should be doing to overcome this.
So I think that one thing that is really important that people have to understand is that the teacher shortage, the education crisis, there's an issue at the top and an issue at the bottom for teachers, and we're kind of stuck in the middle. And that's really all school staff, not just teachers. Schools are really caught in the middle, because when kids come into my classroom, it's not just about my classroom. Everything that they did that morning before, that week before, everything going on with their family comes with them, and those things have to be addressed. So we get the things from the state, those requirements and expectations, but then also from parents and home environments, or even community. in my neighborhood, it is very, very common to hear gunshots regularly.
Wow.
And not that I don't feel safe in my area, but there are people that are, firing off guns into the air or whatever, and there is some violence for sure. And so those things impact me, they impact my child, and that's not a school problem, but that does come into school. When we talk about healthcare, that lack of access comes into the classroom as well. Parents not having access, parents not being financially stable. The median income in Tulsa is 29,000. So when you talk about education, it's not a singular issue. All of these other things contribute, because what we've heard a lot about is children's behavior has changed over the generation before. And that's true, but that is because, society has changed so greatly. My principal last year, he is in his 70s, and we were talking about school, and I said, how far away did you live, from your elementary? And he's like, oh, it was close by. It was in walking distance. And I said, well, what about your teachers? How close to your school did they live? They lived within that community. Our society is not like that. We're driving, we're doing things remotely. We have greatly expanded our communities. They're geographically huge. And so that changes the dynamic. So kids are different, and that is a challenge in education in general. And then all of these different requirements, no child left behind, the Every Child Succeed acts, like all of these things kind of add to it. Parents being overworked means that we have less parents able to volunteer. Like it's not a singular issue. It's not just salaries. It's not just class size. It's everything all at once from all aspects. And I think that the way to change that, the way to address that is we have to look at solutions that are outside of the schoolhouse.
Okay.
We can't solve all of the problems from the school outward. It has to be a collaborative effort. Things in school have to change. Things outside of school have to change. I asked Senator Dom several months ago at a community meeting he had come to here in Tulsa about, would the state consider changing their funding formula for transportation? I think the limit right now is like out inside of a mile and a half. They don't provide any funding for that. If we had funding to provide transportation without those type of restrictions, that would change a lot of things for Tulsa. Attendance is a big deal. Transportation is a huge factor in that. So when you're talking about the teacher crisis, everything's on fire everywhere, and you have to address it all. You're not going to be able to just focus on one thing. And I think that that's the hard part, is because there are so many things going on. So many people are talking about things, and you don't know where to prioritize. And it's a little bit of everything. If you look at it as taking care of people, if you take care of access to healthcare, if you take care of transportation, if you take care of all those things, school's going to improve in line with that. Schools are kind of a reflection of the condition of your society, for sure.
Yeah.
It is not the singular cause. It is a contributing factor, but it is also a reflection of where your society is and what you deem as important.
So I was struck by what you were saying about all of the external pieces that actually come with the child into the classroom. I mean, we've long said that kids cannot learn if they come to school hungry, but we could say the same thing if they're feeling unwell. And so what you're proposing is really a top to bottom rethinking about education and the ways that society contributes or takes away from successful education of our kids. Where do you even start with something of that magnitude?
I think one of the things for me is we need to have some genuine conversations with people in the legislature that are making these decisions.
Yeah.
If you have been homeschooled, you don't have an understanding of public school. You have an understanding of learning. You have an understanding of education. I don't want to take away from any homeschool parents or anything like that, or private school or any. What I do want to emphasize, though, is that when you have a different experience, you have a different perspective. That's really all it is. If I was going to propose a law about welding, for instance, I have to go talk to welders. That's not my area of expertise. I do know about learning in school and licensing for teaching. I need to talk to the people in that field. So having some conversations about what does public education genuinely and truly look like, not just in the classroom, but like, what does a child's experience and day look like? My son gets up at 6 a.m. We leave our house at 7:30. He gets on the bus at 8 o'clock. He gets to school at 8:30. Breakfast is technically over at 8:30. So maybe he gets to eat, maybe he does. So there are all these things. And then depending on circumstances, my experience as a child in public education may be different. When my daughter was in pre-K and kindergarten, I had to be at work at 5 a.m. So we were up at 3, she was dropped off with somebody else. All of those things kind of factor in. And if you don't have that understanding, I think that that's where some of these decisions come from. So educating our legislature, educating parents. I don't know about anybody else, but nobody told me how to support my child's education. Not that there was nothing, there were bits and pieces here and there, but I really didn't know. The reason that I was able to support my kids so well is really because I pursued a degree in that area, and I've worked for Tulsa Public Schools for the last 14 years. So I know all these things, but our parents don't. I know that there's been a lot of talk about parents' rights and things like that. And I think that the conversation has taken a terrible turn from what it could be. There are lots of parents' rights that parents just don't even know that they have. And we don't push for them to know those things or to have the resources for those things. I think educating people about what this really looks like is step one, while also talking to the people that are in those positions and finding out from their perspective what they need. I teach secondary. Elementary is a totally different ballgame, requires a different level of expertise and requires different supports than what I do. I don't have to put my kids' phone numbers on their arm when we go on a field trip. That's not a safety issue. What I do need to be concerned about is weapons in school, fighting, drug use, those sorts of things. And so helping people to understand, I think getting community volunteers. I know with the pandemic, there's been a pullback from everybody, coming into schools, but I think that if you care about education and you can go volunteer in whatever capacity, and it can be on the weekends. I can promise you there are plenty of teachers that are in their rooms on the weekends if you want to help. And so kind of pulling back the curtain and providing some transparency and context is step one. And I think that also builds a team. As a teacher, parents are part of my team. My administrator are part of my team. My students actually are part of my team, and we have to work together to accomplish our goals. So I want to do this and I want to do this has to stop, and it has to go. This is what our children need. This is what our community needs. This is what our family needs. And I have an idea about how to accomplish that. I have an idea about how to accomplish that. Okay, let's look at actually which one of these are going to make the most impact. Maybe it's a little bit of this. Maybe it's a little bit of this. Maybe it's all this. Maybe it's, so having those kind of conversations and really opening the doors. We're not trying to keep secrets in education. That's not the goal. And so to get people out of that mindset that there's something nefarious going on behind closed doors is probably the biggest step here in Oklahoma. And then actionable items, I think that we have to start looking at support staff salaries. There was an article here recently that talked about a livable wage in Oklahoma is like $29 an hour. My support staff at my school are not making that. They're making 10, 11, 14, 15. That matters to be able to retain people. And, custodians, library aides, teachers' assistants, office clerks, I can't do what I need to do without them. So we need to decide that this is important, that this is an emergency, and it needs to be an all hands on deck conversation. And there are certainly actionable steps that we could take. Paying for school lunches. We saw how well that helped people during the pandemic. It really alleviated a lot of issues. That's something that we could easily implement. Looking at class sizes and what we can actually do to limit that would be great. Our State Department has accreditation standards, but they waive those all the time, depending on like financial strain or inability to hire, things like that. So some of the things that have already been worked on, adding in like maternity leave, trying to work with colleges and create different programs. But I think that having everybody on the same page is the only way that we're going to get to some real good solutions. Otherwise, we're just putting Band-Aids on things.
So the paradigm that seems to always be in the legislature is that 1950s father knows best paradigm, or Leave It to Beaver, June Cleaver at home look, or even the Andy Griffith Show, where it's that constant bond every day. And we've got to start getting the legislature to start thinking outside of the box and start thinking beyond those paradigms, because as a state, we have grown beyond that to the point where we've got a very, and I'm not going to use the word diverse in the traditional meaning, but we are diverse in how how our population and culture has grown. And like you talked about, we're a very transient community now, where people, they have to depend on transportation to go from one place to another. And when you said only have a mile and a half, if you live within a mile and a half, you don't have any transportation to and from school. I mean, that in itself, a mile and a half. If you're 1.4 miles away, we're talking about somebody who has to walk 45 minutes one way just to get to school.
Yep. And even with transportation and TPS, I had a student whose bus stop was 25 minutes away from his house. That's not, my dad got on the bus like right at the corner. Even I got on the bus at the corner. I think funding started to drop as I was getting to high school, and they started changing things a little bit, but it matters when you're in pre-K and your mom needs to be at work at a certain time. Well, do I drop you off at school early? Do I, find somebody who can take you? Do I have you wait? Do I drive you to a bus stop? Like, what's the in between? And the idea of like, it takes a village has now changed. I think that it still takes a village. I think that people just don't realize that the village is not as close to them anymore. Everybody needs people, but my neighbors all get in their cars in the morning and drive away. So we don't see each other at work, at the store, in the same way that we used to. When I worked at Memorial Junior High, which is out on like 51st and Sheridan, I might stop at the store on my way. So I'm not at a store, within my community. So those cashiers, they don't know me. I don't know them. And so that idea of like, I saw your kid doing something down the street has kind of gone away. And it's not because people don't care. It's just because our world's opened up and we've met people outside of that, and we have all these connections to places outside of our like real close area. But yeah, a mile and a half for a 5-year-old to walk to school because their parents don't have transportation, or they need to be dropped off earlier, that's an issue, and people don't understand how that works, because when they went to school, you just walked down to the corner and you got on the bus and you had breakfast and you had lunch, and yeah.
I believe it was Carrie Keck who we had on this show not too long ago. She's running for position out of Shawnee, and she made a comment. I believe it was her. She made the comment. No, it was the candidate out of that's running for Senate, Senator candidate Fuchsa, said that you can't. The teacher crisis in Oklahoma, you could literally see the exodus of teachers and staff leaving out of Oklahoma from space because there were so many people that were leaving and going somewhere else. We've got advertisements the last 2 years, billboards all over Oklahoma City who say, if as a teacher, come to Texas, we'll pay you twice as much. And we're seeing just all of those things take place. And yet we have a superintendent of public instruction who is more interested in spreading hate and targeting specific groups of people than he is about trying to improve public instruction. So we need to talk about a couple of other topics here. We're moving along on time, and we need to I'm going to give you time to continue to have a conversation about our public education. But I wanted to ask you about the healthcare crisis in Oklahoma, and we're seeing VAs like down in Southeast Oklahoma. The VA's closing down. The one I think over in is it Tishomingo or is it in Muskogee is closing down the VA hospitals over there. And but they're public hospitals crisis. We're seeing the problem all over Oklahoma. Doctors don't want to come to Oklahoma to practice anymore. So talk to us a little bit about your understanding of the healthcare crisis and what you think you would want to try to champion as a representative for your constituents and how to help them have better access to healthcare.
So I think that this very directly relates to the women's rights issues because that's part of it.
Sure.
We're not just talking about limiting, women's reproductive rights. We're changing the way that doctors are expected to care for their patients, and they're being asked to focus on legalities rather than health. And that's a problem. And as a doctor, they take an oath to do no harm. And so when your state policies create an environment where they may be required to do harm, who would want to come here under those circumstances? And so I think that the issue of, doctor availability, closing down clinics, that sort of thing, until we have an honest conversation about what we're talking about with women's rights, because that's a snowball thing. I mean, we've seen that. It's this issue now, but it will become something else. We have states looking at, ending access to birth control or IVF. Like there's all these things that can snowball with that. And I think that that's going to happen here as well. And it won't just be with women. It will eventually be with other things. And so I think that good doctors are going to look at that and be hesitant. So I think that we need to, again, have some honest conversations about what our goals are. Are we actually trying to help people? Are we actually wanting to reduce abortion? Because restricting abortion doesn't actually lower the rates of abortion or unwanted pregnancies. That's not the solution. And so even if you have an opposition to abortion, I would think you would want the most effective way to actually limit abortion. And then also, access to healthcare is another problem because if I am relying on the ER constantly because I don't have insurance for these other things, that creates a burden on our hospitals and the staff. So then who wants to stay there? And so again, it's another situation where if we look at taking care of people, we solve a lot of our issues. Everything is connected and we're all interwoven together. That's what a society is. So when we're talking about, doctors wanting to come here, doctors also have children, so they're going to be wanting to put them in schools. They may have the money for private school, but prefer public education. I know I would prefer my child in public ed, even if I could afford private school. And so if the education system is not great here, or if their spouse is not able to find work here because we're not able to bring in jobs, everything is kind of connected. And I think the focus has to be on actually helping people. The strain on healthcare because of lack of insurance and lack of access contributes to the strain on the staff. And that adds to them leaving because there are better options, other places. One of the things that I would like to look at is identifying the places where we're missing services and looking at what incentives we could potentially put into place to get practices into those areas, or what partnerships or programs could we try to support to help fill in those gaps. I know that there are interim studies done every year, and so I'm sure that there have been several on different aspects of access to healthcare. And so I think going back to any of the research that we've already done and evaluating that, and again, talking to experts, seeing what the options are. If we look at Tulsa, for example, and we see an area that has an overabundance of medical facilities, like this is just a highly concentrated area, maybe we have the conversation about what would that look like? What incentives could we offer to some of these providers to spread out to these other areas within Tulsa? Same with like rural areas. If we have a facility here, but not here, is there any type of way to incentivize some type of collaboration or sharing of resources or time? Is there a facility that could be rented out on a regular basis for clinics? Is there a church or community organization that is willing to have some type of partnership and provide space for a mobile clinic or things like that? I think we have to be a little bit creative, but I think we have to look at data. We have to talk to people. And again, remember that everything is kind of intertwined. Nothing is singular. If we see improving outcomes in healthcare, we'll see improvements in education and vice versa. If we see improvements in crime, we'll see improvements in healthcare, we'll see improvements in education, we'll see, improvements in the economy. All of it is connected, and you have to take that kind of approach where you look at all of the contributing factors. But I think creativity and innovation, not to say we can't do something that we've always done because we know it works. If we have something that works, I'm all for it. But if we know something doesn't work, I don't like to beat my head against the wall. I want to make progress. So if it doesn't work, let's figure out why. Let's redesign it. Let's change it. Let's put something else in place, and let's get some momentum going.
You've just offered a master's class in
yes.
connectedness, and the reason that I think it stands out for me is because in our state legislature, it is so polarized, and not just Republican and Democrat. You've got rural, suburban, urban. Uh, each of those is divided. But more to the point, I think, is that for too long, our legislators have just dug in their heels to continue doing the same things the same ways, without really taking stock of, is this working? If not, why? If so, how can we apply it somewhere else? How do you envision those conversations going with your colleagues at the state capitol?
I think that there's this idea that there's no way to compromise or work together, and the bipartisanship is a dirty word. And I even hate to use it because of all the connotations that it draws up for people. I have Republicans in my district that I am running to represent. Even though we don't have a Republican running at the moment, and we're not likely to go to a general, so those Republicans won't be able to vote for me, I'm asking to represent them as well. And Perfect. They deserve for me to represent what they believe in. And so I think that part of it is, what conversations have you had with your constituents about this? The House of Representatives represents people within the state house. So if I have an idea that I think is an amazing thing, and I put in the work to demonstrate that this is going to work out, and I go to my constituents and I say, hey, here's what I'm thinking about doing, and they go, oh, absolutely not. We do not want that. I have to pump the brakes. And so I think in the House, part of it is, what conversations have you had with your constituents? And not just, oh, they don't like this. What do they actually need? Because maybe they don't like your idea because they see another solution that I can go, Oh, yeah, absolutely. Hold on. Let me go back to my district. You know what? Even though it's overwhelmingly Democratic, the Democrats, the Republicans, the independents, we all agree that actually this other idea that you came up with is really great. I don't think that you put forth a bill and hope that just your party is going to vote on it. I think when you put forth a bill, it's supposed to help everybody. Yes, you're coming in with your agreement to kind of your party's ideals and values. But in my view, people override party. And if the people of your district override your party, those conversations to me are easy. In practice at the moment, the way things are going, I think that part of the conversation that I will have is getting people to understand that whenever I bring something forward, it is genuine, it is intentional, it has been thought out, and it has been researched. And so when you look at it and reflect on it, keep those things in mind and also come to the table with that genuineness and that integrity and that intention as you critique it. I think that when somebody brings me something, I'm going to assume that that's the way that they brought it to be about. And I'm going to look at it with that eye. And if it holds up to that critique, then let's talk about it. If I read through this and you've considered the consequences and you've got research and you've really got a plan for this, I can vote yes on a Republican presented bill. That's fine. Right. And at the same time, as if a Democrat brings me something, and again, I go through it and I think, okay, you did this with genuine care and concern and research, and I start looking and it doesn't hold up to muster, I'm okay with voting no on a Democrat presented bill. And I think that that's the thing is I've got to let people know who I am. I have this conversation with students all the time because I feel like I'm kind of an outlier in some things. And I say, I can't speak for everybody. Every teacher, every legislator, they're going to do something different. What I can tell you is what I'm going to do because what my character is, what my values are, and I'm going to present that to you and you evaluate whether or not you respect that and appreciate that and can work with that. And so that's my plan is to go in. We don't have to pretend we're on opposite parties. Okay, that's fine. We have different beliefs. Again, fine. What we have in common is I have human beings that are depending on me to come in here and do my best work. And you have human beings that are depending on you to come in here and do your best work. Let's present our best work. If that leads to a disagreement, fine. But I think if we come from that approach, if we start talking about the people that are going to be impacted by things, that changes the conversation. It's not about party, it's about people. And I hope that there are other like-minded people in the legislature, and I believe that there are. They may not get the press time or the recognition, but I don't believe that every single person in the legislature is malicious or unkind or uncaring. So I think that you find people, you connect with people, you get to know people, you build trust. And I think that I'm a good person who's able to see both sides. I've been wrong plenty of times. People have corrected me and I learn from it and I keep moving. And my willingness to do that tends to spread in the places that I am where people are willing to go, okay, actually, you're right. Okay, I guess on the other side of this, I was wrong. Even whenever, it's kind of uncomfortable, it's not adversarial to disagree. It's growth. Mm-hmm. If I sharpen my knife, I don't rub it on a pillow, So that friction, that conflict, that is building something stronger and better. If we keep that in mind, I think we make a lot of progress. And if that's not the attitude in the House right now, I fully intend that'll be the attitude when I leave. That's part of how I help Oklahomans is to bring in this idea of stop with the party and tell me about the people.
So that goes hand in hand with what President Biden says. You cannot just love your country when your party wins. We in the state of Oklahoma, we can't just love the state of Oklahoma when only our party wins, because We are predominantly a Republican state, probably will be a Republican state for a while. But at the same time, we've got to be able to love this state and love the people that are in it and be able to work with those people, just like what you were talking about. We can't just love this state only when our party wins. And that's kind of the takeaway that I took. And again, taking words away from Scott, you gave us a master class in how cooperation and collaboration are wonderful things that, we just because we've got a D beside our name as a candidate or as a representative versus an R doesn't mean that we have to discard everything that is said and say that that person is wrong about everything because guess what? The sun always comes up in the east. It always sets in the west. There is no argument about that. We all agree on that. Yep. So, all right. Big topic.
I'm going to stay with this just for a moment, Kevin.
Sure.
Michelle, at the beginning of this broadcast, you talked about your reasons for staying in Oklahoma. And you and I both know lots and lots of families who have made the decision to leave the state. You've made it clear why you are here, why you are running for office, why you are so deeply connected to HD-72. How do you encourage other people to stay and work for progress, as you just described, as opposed to packing up and leaving?
Well, first, I reserve any judgment of people who choose to leave, because I think that the decision to leave a place that you've called home is hard. If I decided to leave Oklahoma, that would be a really agonizing decision. I would probably spend months, if not years, like really debating, and then all of the work to like make that happen. So if that becomes your choice for your family, for your safety, whatever, I can respect that. However, if you're not at that place yet, what I would say to you is we're all in this together. And somebody asked me the other day about like kind of the same similar thing about like, how do you keep going? If we're trying to move this iceberg out of the way to get us to some progress, if it's just me chiseling away at the iceberg, we're never going to get through it. If everybody is chiseling away in whatever way, shape, or form that is, whether it's you volunteer with like a neighborhood group or a church or, a political party, whether it be you volunteer in school, find your place and just chisel away. I think progress oftentimes in our mind appears to be this huge, significant thing that we're always on the look for of like, this is the sign that we've progressed. But progress is very, very small to me. Progress is we got rid of the grocery tax, a bill presented by Democrats, passed by Republicans. Did that completely revolutionize the entire state? No, but that took a chunk of the iceberg that we can add to people. When I get a parent that's willing to come in and volunteer at school for 30 minutes, that's a piece chiseled away at the iceberg because all of those things plant seeds. So I really try to tell people, of course, take care of yourself, be safe, those sorts of things. But if you have it in you to still be here, if you haven't left yet or you can't leave, you might as well grab a chisel with me while you're here. So if that means that you share a Facebook post, if that means that you invite, if somebody wants me to meet them at a coffee shop for coffee in 72, I will meet you for coffee. I will have that conversation. If you want me to stop by your house because you're having a barbecue, I will come by. I will talk to you. You can meet me and get to know me and decide if I'm somebody that you want to vote for. And if I am, and you want to support me, and you help me to connect with other people, you're helping to chisel away at that iceberg. I don't think that it is reasonable for any of us to come in and go, I'm going to change everything. I'm going to change something for somebody. for some amount of time. That's what I'm going to do. It might be for 6 months. It might be for 6 years. It might be for 60 years or 6 centuries. And it might be for 5 people or 2 people or 5 million people. But I'm going to change something for somebody for some amount of time. I'm going to do my part. I'm going to lend what I can. This is what I can carry right now. I will carry it. And when you feel like you can't carry it anymore, make sure you have a list of people that you can call that will tell you it's okay to take a rest for a moment, but also encourage you to pick it back up again when you're ready. That's really the best thing. Is this is not, the state of Oklahoma as it is today is not permanent. Every session we pass new bills, cities pass ordinances, things change constantly. This is not permanent. And if you look at everything, it can be a lot. It can really feel overwhelming and it can be frustrating. But I promise you, there are a whole lot of us with chisels and we're trying. And if you join us, we make a lot more progress. And I know that it's tiring, and that's why community is so important. And, you know, for what it's worth, for me, the internet is amazing because I can reach people all over, and I have found community that I didn't have locally online, for example, and that helped me hold on until I found some things locally. And so, you know, we have a real opportunity with where our technology is that you don't have to be the most social person to get connected. So get connected, carry what you can carry, take breaks when you need to, and just know that regardless of how much of the iceberg you're able to see, there are a bunch of us chiseling away at it. It will change. You might have to look closely and you might have to wait a minute, but progress will come. And I mean that in every sense of the word. And I don't mean Democrat policies I just mean in general, progress will be made. We will get better. We will stumble along the way, but we'll get better. And if you're here, you might as well be part of it. You might as well join in. The idea that your voice doesn't count feels very real, but it's not. Your voice does count. We can go, I mean, you guys are aware, we can pull up races where somebody won by 20 or 30 votes.
Right.
You know, I know people that have more than 20 or 30 people at their family reunion. So clearly, small groups of people can change things. So.
Great.
That was great.
We need to talk about, and we've already touched upon this. You went into some detail, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to go further into detail, because we're going to talk about women's rights and bodily autonomy, but this can go on to a broader spectrum too, for equal rights for everybody. Because when you talk about taking away women's rights to an abortion or IVF or birth control, what other things what other liberties are we going to see taken away in the future, and how far are people willing to accept the control that's being forced upon them by a couple of, a few zealots, a minority group within the state of Oklahoma that wants to control everything about what you do within your private house and within your life. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk about women's rights, and then we're going to close this down in just a few minutes with, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about, your platform and give us, the best, why you're the best candidate for this position. So we'll start with women's rights.
So let's just get the big one out of the way with abortion. I understand all the reasons why people object to getting one, and I think that's fine. I think that the reality of it is that a lot of people misunderstand that term.
Right.
An abortion is a specific thing. It has specific procedures to do it, timeframes, all of that. There are all these things that contribute. And I say that there's a misunderstanding because we've frequently heard people talk about abortions after birth or like after 9 months. And that's just murder.
Right.
Abortion is not just the ending of a life, so to speak. Like there are actual specifics to what an abortion is. So if you think that you can have an abortion after you give birth, you don't understand what an abortion is. I also think a lot of people really misunderstand who makes the decision to have an abortion. I recently watched, and I wish I had written down her name. I saved the video, but a woman in another state talking about in her state house, talking about that she was currently pregnant, standing, speaking, and she was going to have an abortion because her pregnancy was not viable.
Right.
And so that's a realistic thing. When you have a pregnancy and the fetus has died already, but is still in your body, you're having an abortion. Like, that's part of it. Let's get away from the abortion piece and talk about like all of the other things. Where's the line of the government deciding which healthcare things I can have? We already have insurance companies making a lot of our healthcare decisions. As a teenager, I injured my knee in a basketball game. The surgery that they suggested, I could not get because it was elective and it wasn't something that my family could afford. Thankfully, that turned out okay, but for a lot of people, that doesn't happen. So where's the line of the government saying like, well, I mean, yeah, you need a lung transplant, but like technically you could suffer through life without one for a little longer. So we're going to wait until, you're further. So like where do we stop that? Where do we say, you can't have this because I disagree with it? And I think that that's the issue. We talk about parents' rights. We're talking about all these other things. What if I, as a parent, take my child into the doctor and the doctor says, your child needs sinus surgery. My son actually had surgery last summer, 2 of them. So let's say I go in and my son needs sinus surgery and the government says, well, we don't allow any surgeries before 18, or we don't allow any surgeries that cost more than this or that require this. I am not a doctor and I'm running for office. So as a teacher, do we really think that it's appropriate that I decide what you are allowed to do for healthcare? I have no background in medicine. I have no licensing in medicine. So I can tell you what you can and cannot do with your body. What about vitamins or allergy shots? It just creates this place where you're setting a precedent that your choices are not your own. What happens when it expands outside of healthcare? What happens when we start passing laws that limit the food that you can eat or the clothing that you can buy or the cars that you can drive? What happens whenever we go, actually, if we set up a curfew, we have less crime. So everybody has to be in the house at 10 p.m. We have to remember that all of our laws and policies are interconnected and have consequences. So when you talk about women's rights, that also affects children, that also affects men, that also affects, communities as a whole. Like, we can't say we're just doing just these people. We're just going to take advantage of these people. We're just going to harm these people. It spreads every time. We can look all throughout history where that happened. Let's talk about the places that started tracking people or tracking things that they did. Where did those things end up? So it's much bigger than reproductive rights. It's much bigger than abortion. It's much bigger than women's rights. It's rights to privacy. It's rights to healthcare. It's right to having bodily autonomy and freedom to do not just what you want, but often what you need. Pregnancy is not a neutral condition. Pregnancy creates an extreme risk of a lot of different things and is a very dangerous time in a woman's life. Being pregnant is a health risk, and it can be life or death. And so to say that we're going to remove a well-researched, well-developed procedure that we know the outcomes for, we know the consequences, we know how this works, we're going to limit that because this group of people disagrees with it. There are a lot of things that I disagree with, but I also appreciate that people have the freedom to do those things. You're allowed to do that. I don't have to participate in it. I don't have to help you to do it necessarily even, but I don't have to stand in your way. I don't have to prevent you from being able to live your life. And my biggest concern with the women's rights thing is I'm past having children. That won't be an issue for me. However, my daughter may want to have kids one day. My neighbor may want to have kids one day. The lady at the grocery store may want to have kids one day. And when you limit things like that, when women know the risks of pregnancy, it makes people hesitate. I've talked to people who have said, well, we were going to, raise our kids here in Oklahoma, but now we're holding off because we don't want to get pregnant right now. Things are it adds too many risks. So we're going to wait. Well, those people are not going to wait forever to have a child. What they're going to do is they're going to leave the state and they're going to raise children elsewhere, and they may never come back. And if people don't have children in your state, we have not figured out immortality yet.
That's right.
We're not having kids in our state, then our state ceases to exist. We're all going to eventually die out. And we have to take care of people. And then you also have all of the outlier things, rape, incest, all of these things that contribute to somebody being pregnant and not wanting to be, children being pregnant. I don't think, again, that we have this clear picture of what it is that we're talking about. I think that it comes from emotion. I think that it comes from faith for a lot of people. And I respect that. And I think that we should engage those people in what they can do to support what they believe without hindering access to other people.
Right.
If you want to offer alternatives to abortion, let's talk about it. Let's get you signed up as a foster parent. Let's get you signed up to adopt. Let's get you volunteering at a shelter. Let's do that. If that's what you want to do, if you want to, let's, pay for somebody's ultrasound, pay for their prenatal vitamins. If that's what you want to do, if you want to avoid abortions, if you want to stop those, do all of the things that we've already done the research and know help prevent those things. Provide sex education.
Right. I believe the senator you were talking about was Senator Eva Birch from Arizona, who just got up on the floor this last Monday and gave a speech, and it was very moving. It was very emotional, and it was something that brought tears to my eyes when I watched her talk about that. So. And again, talk about bringing tears to my eyes, just about bringing tears to my eyes, listening to your story about talking about, how abortion, it's such it's such a challenge. It's not just it's just not a cut and dried issue. There's a lot of dynamics to it. We do need to talk about one more topic, and can you give us your best prepared speech on when you go to the neighborhoods and you go to the rallies for your candidacy? Why should voters vote for you?
So I think the biggest thing is I'm knocking on doors because one of the most important things to me is talking to people. And outside of policy, one of the things that I'm committed to doing if I'm elected is that you will see me in my district. I will be available. You don't have to call me in Oklahoma City. You don't have to email me. I will have times where I'm in the community and available. That is just a non-negotiable for me. I don't care what fundraising I have to do or what adjustments I need to make. I will be at the community. If you want me to come to an event, I will come. And so that's a big part of it is I'm running to represent people. I'm not running for myself. Obviously, good legislation benefits me as well. But the bigger issue is benefiting everybody else. And that's what I'm here for. So that's one of the big things. When you talk about policy and stuff like that, I think that I'm very realistic. I'm not going to promise you the 85 bills that I'm going to pass in a super majority Republican House. That's not realistic. And I think that that's disrespectful to voters to try to do that. What I can say is I will work my behind off to pass everything that I believe in and that my district wants me to work for. What I will also do is be very, very intentional about looking for things that are easy to agree on for everybody and trying to get those through. I will absolutely stand up and speak against anything that I think is harmful from either party. If you are unsure about my confidence in standing up, I suggest you look at some TPS board meetings that I've attended. I work for those people, and I have very directly called them out to their face. I am more than willing to do that. That's part of the job. Representing people, you are also saying the things that maybe aren't so nice and that they don't want to hear. And so that's really my promise, is that I represent people, that I will stand up for you, that I'm not afraid to say, actually, I think that's a terrible idea, and I don't think that we should do it, and I think we should do this instead, or we shouldn't address this at all. I will be in the community. I will be available. You will not have to look for me and find me. If I'm elected, that'll be my only job. I do have to finish through because I don't have the savings to just take off. But once that transition is made, that will be my full-time job. And so even outside of session, I will be acting as an elected official. I will be at places and interacting with people. And I think that that's really the biggest difference. I'm very real. I'm very genuine. I'm not promising you the world and then delivering nothing. I'm promising you what I've already delivered in other capacities. I'm part of my teachers union. I've done that for teachers. I've done that for students. I've called parents and advocated for them with the district, and I will do that for people. And I think that that is what really and truly sets me apart. I'm from this district. I'm extremely connected to this district. And before I ever announced, I did the work to make sure that this was a good decision. This was not a last minute thing. I thought about this for probably 8 months before I finally decided to do it. And I have been working on myself and my campaign since October of 2022 because I'm that committed to it.
Excellent, excellent. And again, we want to support Michelle. We want to do everything we can and wish her all the best as we move forward. And we want to follow you all the way through your campaign. But we also need people who are watching this to contribute and help you financially get to the goals that you need. In order to do that, there's 2 ways to do that. Go to your website, which is McCaneforok.com. That's MCCANE 4, OK, the letter 4, or excuse me, the number 4. Or the other way is to go to the secure.actblue.com, donate McCane 2024. And I'll put a link on the screen for everybody to be able to see that so that they know exactly where to do it. Plus I'll make sure that that's posted in the comment section so people can cut and paste that and support your campaign. So thanks so much for coming on Coffee with Democrats and spending some time with us. We apologize that we didn't get this done in less than an hour, but we really appreciate you being gracious enough to just continue on and not holding us accountable to a time limit. So thanks so much for being with Coffee with Democrats. And as always, we wish you all the best.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me. I've really enjoyed this conversation. The questions were great. And so I thank you for this opportunity to talk to people. And I hope that as people listen, they'll reach out and connect with me if they hear something that resonates with them or if they have questions about anything.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so
All
much.
best wishes, Michelle. You're young, you're bright, you're intelligent, you're educated, and you're the exact kind of person we need at the Capitol.
Thank you. I appreciate that.